Did you know that thousands of millennials in Europe all follow the same system to retire early? Once I discovered their strategy, I started using it too, and I'm now on my way to retire within the next 10 years. So in this video, I will show you the exact strategy they've used and how to make that easier and faster so that you will be able to retire early too. So let's start with the step that most people do wrong, and because of that, they never retire. A couple months ago, my father finally retired at 65. He's been working for his whole life and now he can finally relax. But when I was checking his finances, I discovered he had made exactly this mistake. And if it wasn't for that, he could have retired at least 15 years earlier. Why is that? Because it was already many years he had enough money to cover his life expenses without any problem. But he didn't know it. The fact is that people always think of retirement as an age objective, but it's not. It is a financial milestone. It's a target that tells you, once you have that much money, you can do whatever you want. If you want to retire, you can do it. If you want to continue working, you can do it too. And this is why the first step of this system is to understand how much money you need to retire. But how do you do that? It is actually very simple. First, estimate your living expenses during retirement. Studies say that, as a rule of thumb, the expenses should stay similar to just before retirement, except if there are big lifestyle changes. Anyway, the number doesn't have to be perfect, we're just making an estimation. And so let's say 40,000 euros per year. Second, you use the 4% rule to understand how much you need. This is an empirical rule that experts developed after thousands of simulations, and it helps estimate the minimum amount of savings you need to retire. And to use it, you just have to divide your living expenses by 4%. So 40,000 divided by 4% is 1 million euros. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this rule, because it could lead to errors. For example, inflation is not really taken into account, and assumptions made could lead to mistakes. So, to be on the safe side, I use something I learned as an engineer. Imagine you're building a bridge. You've made all your calculations and you've found how much weight it should be able to support. Now, would you guarantee 100% that the bridge will never fall? No, you can't. You're always subject to estimation errors and situations you might not have predicted. This is why, to compensate for any potential error, every engineer always uses a safety margin on his calculations. This means, for example, to increase the strength of the bridge by 25% so that you can drastically reduce the risk for any error. And I would advise you to do the same with the savings for your retirement. And since we're talking about something that is life-changing, I would use a big safety margin of 50%. This means that instead of 1 million, the target to safely retire now would be 1.5 million euros. But knowing this number isn't enough to retire early. And this is why this second step is critical, because it will drastically reduce the time you will need to wait. Just imagine that in my case, thanks to this step, I will be able to retire in only 10 years. But without it, it would have taken me 25 years. And not only that, because by skipping this step, you would find yourself without enough money during retirement. So what's this step? Well, it simply is investing your money. First, your money will grow much faster and it will allow you to retire earlier. Second, it will protect your money from losing value because of inflation. And this is critical. Otherwise, your money would finish during retirement, because your living expenses will keep rising with inflation. And if you don't know how to invest, don't worry. I've made a full video that explains exactly how to start investing in the simplest way possible. And all this brings us to the next big step. How exactly do you get your money for retirement? Imagine you have a chicken. Every day it lays eggs, and as long as you take them, you will always have something to eat. But if you decide to eat the chicken, you will stop having these eggs, and you will have to find another way to provide for food. Retirement works exactly the same way. You can just spend your savings however you want. You need to carefully withdraw your money as you would do with the eggs. But how do you actually do that in practice? Well, if you follow the previous steps, you will be able to safely withdraw enough each year to cover your living expenses, adjusted for inflation, for the rest of your life. Now, I understand all this math could look difficult, but don't worry, because I've developed a free retirement planner tool that makes all this super easy. You can find it in the description, and in a couple of clicks it will help you estimate how many years until you can retire. But before using it, you need to know how to reach your retirement even faster. So let me show you 3 strategies that will accelerate your retirement. Imagine you're going for a hike. You might have a backpack full of gears that could be useful, but they will also slow you down. If instead you take a lighter backpack with just the essentials, you will reach the top of the mountain much faster. And it's the same with retirement. This is why the first way to retire even earlier is to reduce your living expenses. Maybe you can stay in a cheaper house, live in the countryside, or even live in a cheaper country. Either way, by reducing your living expenses, you will need much less savings to be able to retire. Now, imagine that you're filling your own pool, and it's taking a lot of time. What if you get a more powerful pump so that you can put in more water? The pool will fill up much faster, and savings work exactly the same way. So by increasing how much money you save each year, you will drastically reduce the time to reach retirement. But how do you do that? Well, to accelerate your savings, you need to either increase your income or your savings rate. The first may mean to get a raise, change jobs, or maybe even create your own business. Because the more money you put in, the faster you will reach your objective. At the same time, if instead of saving 10% of your salary, you save 20% of it, you will remove many years from your timeline. Finally, imagine now that you're moving to a new house all by yourself. But moving all the furniture and the boxes takes too much time. So you ask a friend for some help, and this way you go much faster. Well, developing a passive income is exactly like having a friend helping you out, because this additional money will help you cover your living expenses during retirement, and this means you will need to save less money before you can retire. So by applying these 3 strategies, you can drastically cut off years until your retirement. So what you should do now is to play around with the retirement tool in the description to understand where you stand and how to retire faster. The thing is, planning to retire early is useless if you had bad money habits, because they will destroy your finances without you even noticing it. I've seen too many people all making the same mistakes and ending up struggling just to pay their bills. This is why I've made a video where I explain which money habits you must change if you ever want to be financially free. And you can watch this video here.